crowd of terrified refugees watched as two fighter jets suddenly leveled their town, all because of an unforeseen virus. Then, the jets turned towards them, clearly intending to leave no survivors. Petrified, they scattered and fled in the chaos. In the chaos, a teacher named Anna spotted the nearby school. She remembered the shelter underneath and yelled for her husband and daughter. As they ran, a jet bombed the hillside right behind them. The terrifying blast forced the three of them to scramble even faster. They finally reached the shelter's entrance, but the pursuing jet seemed to have spotted them. The husband immediately started smashing the lock. He broke it just in time, getting his family safely inside moments before a missile struck. Only when the world outside fell completely silent did they dare to explore by the faint light. Luckily, though the shelter was covered in cobwebs, it was fully stocked with supplies. The father even found a singing doll for his daughter, but she was still recovering from the shock. She asked her father how long they would have to stay there. He couldn't answer, and could only tell her that this was just temporary. Once the crisis outside was over, they'd be free again. And so, the family of three was forced to settle into the sunless shelter. Inside, all sorts of canned goods and a water pump that often got stuck provided them with the basic necessities for survival. Simple board games helped to pass the time. To distinguish between day and night, they even made a special artificial sun. But even so, without seeing any real daylight, the daughter unfortunately developed claustrophobia. Not only would she wake up from nightmares, but she was terrified of everything around her. Luckily, whenever this happened, her father would use games and bedtime stories to soothe her. Her mother would also distract her by holding classes. After getting through each day, the daughter would habitually make a mark on the wall. Before they knew it, the marks covered the entire surface. They had been in hiding for nearly a year. During that year, the daughter wanted to go outside more than once, but was strictly forbidden by her parents each time. They discovered that the world outside had not returned to normal. In fact, it had gotten worse. Perhaps due to the virus, creatures they called brothers appeared, hunting them. They were now possibly the last survivors in the world. Because of this, they not only reinforced the shelter door, but also made 4 unbreakable survival rules for themselves.
1. Never be loud. 2. Never lose control. 3. Never open the door. 4. Never talk about the breathers.
But even so, the young daughter still longed for freedom. Worn down by her pleas, her mother finally took out the periscope to let her see for herself what the world she longed for had become. When the vibrant world she imagined was replaced by death, with nothing but ruins as far as the eye could see, the daughter no longer had any desire to go outside. They thought their days ahead would only be filled with boredom, but they never expected that they would soon face a much more serious problem. Since their only food source was canned goods, and after eating canned beans for several days, the daughter wanted a change of flavor. But when she excitedly opened a can of peaches, she was shocked to find that it was empty. It wasn't until they saw a hole in the can that they realized something was terribly wrong. 12 whole cans had been looted by a rat. That was equivalent to 2 weeks of food for the family. With their food supply already dwindling, this sudden disaster meant they had to ration even more, or they would have to risk going outside for supplies. Luckily, it wasn't long before the daughter found the culprit, the rat. She quickly called her father, who immediately grabbed a dagger and cautiously approached. He thought it was a sure thing, but he missed. The fleeing rat also knocked over the oil lamp on the table. It was about to escape into a hole, but his dagger was still stuck in the table. At the critical moment, the mother acted decisively, killing it with a wrench right at the entrance of the hole. However, before they could breathe a sigh of relief, a bigger crisis emerged. The overturned oil lamp behind them suddenly exploded, instantly setting the entire table on fire. Seeing this, the father tried to get water to put it out, but the pump jammed again at the crucial moment. The mother quickly tore down the curtain, desperately beating at the flames to stop them from spreading. In the end, the father managed to get the water, and together they put out the fire. But the entire bunker was now filled with smoke. Even worse, the smoke was drifting outside through the ventilation duct. This meant their location could be exposed. The father quickly grabbed the periscope and carefully looked outside. Luckily, he didn't see anything unusual, but the mother's expression remained grim. Though the smoke would clear, the ash from the fire would surely pile up at the vent opening. They would be discovered sooner or later. To be safe, they had to bury the ash before the creatures arrived. And so, after a year, they opened the shelter door for the first time. The father and mother quickly climbed out, leaving their daughter behind. But the seconds ticked by. There was still no sign of her parents. Growing more and more afraid, the daughter couldn't help but grab the periscope and look out. She finally found her parents, and her heart settled down. But as she panned the view, she was horrified to see something in the distant woods. A dark figure appeared. Realizing the danger, the daughter tried to warn her parents, but they were too far away to hear. This made her forget all about the survival rules. She scrambled to the exit and pushed open the heavy door. But as far as she could see, her parents were nowhere in sight. As she frantically searched and shouted for them, her mother suddenly appeared behind her and covered her mouth. Then, her father arrived. She was just about to tell them what she'd seen when suddenly, several wild deer sprinted right past them. It turned out to be a false alarm, but the observant mother quickly realized something was wrong. The deer were clearly fleeing, which meant something must be chasing them. Realizing this, they immediately fled back to the shelter. But just before closing the door, the father saw something. He quickly locked the door with a heavy chain, holding his breath, not daring to make a sound. But even so, the footsteps above grew louder and clearer, accompanied by heavy breathing. Their worst fear had come true. The brothers had finally found them, and now they were trying to pull the door open again and again. Fortunately, this didn't last long. Perhaps they gave up because they couldn't open it. But just as the parents breathed a sigh of relief, they turned to see a sight that plunged them back into despair. The winding key on their daughter's doll had snagged on a screw. If it came loose, the doll would make a sound and they would be instantly discovered. The father grabbed the doll, pried out its speaker with a dagger, and then stomped it to pieces. But even so, they were too late. Hearing the noise, the creature pulled at the door again with immense force, so strong that even the arm-thick chain couldn't hold. In this moment of crisis, the mother scrambled to the door, trying to use her own weight to buy time. The father struggled to break open the water pump, tearing off a pipe and quickly passing it up. But before the mother could grab it, the overburdened door was torn open. In tow. In the nick of time, the father arrived with the pipe. As he desperately jabbed at the creature, the mother seized the opportunity to close the door again. Once the father had jammed the door shut with the pipe, the crisis was averted for now. But the family felt no relief at all, because their location had been exposed, and brothers always traveled in groups. Sure enough, it wasn't long before the sound of hurried footsteps shattered the brief calm. The entire shelter began to shake violently. Without a doubt, the breathers' companions had. The sturdy door was destroyed in the blink of an eye. With nowhere to run, the three looked up to see several pairs of terrifying eyes staring down at them. They scrambled deeper inside. The mother grabbed an oil lamp and smashed it on the ground, igniting the curtain, while they both struggled to push a shelf in front of the doorway to block the creatures. But it was clear this wouldn't hold for long. They had to get out of the shelter fast. Fortunately, there was a way out. The ventilation opening was right above their heads. The father quickly broke through the wooden planks with a periscope and successfully pushed his wife and daughter out. But when it was his turn, he found the opening was too narrow for him to get through. After several failed attempts, he made a grim decision and brutally broke his own arm. Enduring the intense pain, he had his wife pull him up. But just then, the creature that had just broken through the wall of fire grabbed him by the legs. He only had time to tell his wife to take care of their daughter before the creature dragged him back down. The sight left the mother and daughter heartbroken, but for her daughter's sake, the mother had to suppress her grief and keep running. In the panic, the daughter tripped and fell. Just as she picked up her doll, she turned to see the creature catching up from behind. This forced them to keep running for their lives. After escaping down the hillside, they reached the same cliff where their nightmare began. And just then, a beam of light swept over them as a helicopter appeared behind them. But they didn't relax. Instead, they grew even more panicked. Then the helicopter fired a large net, trapping them both. And that's when the cruel truth was finally revealed. The so-called brothers were actually armed soldiers in hazmat suits, wearing gas masks and night vision goggles. The real monsters had always been the family of three. It turned out that everyone in the town had been infected with an unknown virus from the beginning. To stop the virus from spreading, the military had to sacrifice the entire town and everyone in it. When they hid in the shelter, the mother had also noticed something strange about their bodies. If they lost control of their emotions, the infected would turn into monsters. This was why they were being hunted. To be certain, the soldiers took blood samples from the mother and daughter. When they saw the blood had turned completely black, the soldiers immediately raised their guns. As the commander raised his hand to give the order, the mother, trying to protect herself, reached the brink of losing control. But in the next second, the father, having completely lost control, arrived first. It turned out that when he was pulled back into the shelter, he had transformed into a monster and killed his attackers. The remaining soldiers saw this and immediately returned fire, but the transformed father was much faster, taking out 4 of them in an instant. Finally, under a hail of bullets, he collapsed. The bulging veins on his face gradually faded as he returned to his human form. The other soldiers cautiously approached to check on him, but when they turned around, they found the mother and daughter had broken free and escaped. They quickly spread out to search. Little did they know, the sight of her husband's tragic end had caused the wife to completely lose control. Transforming into a monster, she launched a surprise attack on the soldiers, but after taking out a few, she too fell under a barrage of gunfire. Seeing her mother about to be executed, the daughter also began to transform. She lunged, tackling the last soldier and attacking him furiously. Just before the soldier was killed, her mother, regaining her senses for a moment, called out to her daughter. She didn't want to see her lose her humanity, but her daughter's emotions were out of control. She She turned and pounced on her mother. Fortunately, with her mother's constant reassurance, the daughter finally calmed down and regained her senses. And this was the true power of the virus. Once emotions spiraled out of control, they would become incredibly strong and mindless monsters. Afterwards, the two looked at the lifeless body of the father and wept bitterly. But there was no time for grief. Seeing another helicopter appear behind them, the mother had to take her daughter and continue their escape until they ducked into an abandoned tunnel where they were finally safe. Exhausted, they both quickly fell into a deep sleep inside the tunnel. After an unknown amount of time, the daughter was suddenly awakened by a noise. Then, the figure of a boy appeared at the end of the tunnel, and he was calling her name. The mother and daughter looked closely and realized he was the boy from next door. A more hidden shelter. And here, not only did the neighbor's family love, but all the other infected survivors from the town were also hiding here. To survive, they had no other choice. Light and hope had become an unattainable luxury for this group of people.